Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So our country has just been through a very difficult election. And my plan is not to talk about Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or anything to do with the election. But since it's on so many people's minds these days, I was trying to think of what might be relevant from Bhagavad Gita. Not in terms of where we can place blame or try to criticize, but really deal with the question of why do we blame so much? If you look around, then everyone is in a process of blaming, feeling terrible about what's happened or feeling very happy about what's happened. And if they're feeling terrible about what's happened, then they're blaming the other people for putting them through it. Or if they're feeling very happy, then they're blaming the other side for, well, not believing in them and not promoting them and not agreeing with them. So there's a section in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, where Krishna, he talks about the question of blame. And he doesn't mention that directly, but he deals with the question of who is responsible for the actions that we perform in this world. Who can we point the finger to? And this is chapter 5, verse 14 and 15. And then I'm going to read the verse and translation for both of them, and then only the purport for for verse 15. Okay. Very powerful verses and purports as well. So here they are. Na kartrutvam na karmani lokasya srijati prabho na karma phala samyogam svabhavastu pravartate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. And then verse 15, Na datte kasyachit papam na chaiva sukritam vibhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantava. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Purport. The Sanskrit word Vibhu means the Supreme Lord who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is Vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is Anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so, when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires. but the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma, or the Supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desires as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not therefore omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute, independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Esha u hyeva sadhu karma karayati tam yam medbhyo lokebhya unninishate esha u eva sadhu karma karayati yam adho ninishate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. Agnyo jantur anishoyam atmana sukha dukkhayo Ishvara prerito gachet svargam va svabhrame vacha. The living entity is completely dependent in his distress and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven or hell, as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord and is thus entrapped by nescience. And under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutras also confirm this. Vaishamya naigrihne nasapekshatvad tatha hi darshayati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, although he appears to. So, when something goes wrong in our lives, or it goes against what we want, we don't get what we want, then typically we look for someone, something to blame. Okay? The initial reaction is always, who can we find to blame? We look around and we find the nearest person, the person who looks most responsible, and we say, he did it, right? It was his fault. And that makes me feel a whole lot better, because I'm not responsible for that. I tried my very best. But because Madan Gopal Prabhu was present, therefore everything went wrong. Now, that approach is natural in human beings, right? It's something we do as kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Problem arises, we look for someone to blame. And so after an election like this one, right, everyone does their analysis and more analysis, and we look and we say, who can we blame for this event that didn't go along the lines of what I wanted, right, or didn't go as I wanted? And we find this person or that person, and once that blame has been placed, we feel better about our situation. Now, when that process is not very fruitful, as in we blame and we blame and we blame more, and yet we can't really figure out who to blame because the problem is too great to place blame on any one individual, or we can't justifiably blame anyone, then as last resort, we finally end up blaming who for it? God, right? We can't find anyone to blame, then you blame God. And so some of the worst problems that happen, we blame God for. Even insurance agencies blame God, right? They have a clause for acts of God, right? And those acts are so great that you can't find a human being to blame. Who caused the earthquake? Well, we don't know, right? So it must be God who did it. Who caused the flooding? Must be God, right? So acts of God, therefore, then is kind of the last resort of who to blame. In this verse, Krishna divests himself of any responsibility for these problems. He says, the Supreme Lord assumes, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. He says, I'm not responsible for the trouble or the good that you get in your life. Now, the question is this true? Does this make sense? Well, obviously, we believe in Bhagavad Gita, so it must be true. But if you set that aside for a minute and you think, well, is it true? Can God be free of blame in this situation? Do we not always say, as Prabhupada himself seems to say in the purport, that not even a leaf moves without the will of the Lord? This verse Prabhupada is quoting from Koshitaki Upanishad. He says, the Lord engages him in us in impious activities so that we may go to hell, or he engages us in pious activities so we may be elevated. By the will of the Supreme Lord, he can go to heaven or to hell. Another verse he quotes. The living entity is completely dependent in his distress and happiness. So do we not feel that God, Krishna, is in charge and controlling of everything? Is that not true? Is he not all-powerful? So can Krishna reasonably avoid blame? Can he reasonably divest himself of blame in this situation? What do you think? Is he being honest, or is he just being like us and saying, no, it's not my fault, it must be yours? What do you think? Is Krishna to blame in the problems of the world, of our life? Well, yes and no. Yes. Krishna says no in the verse. Prabhupada in the purport says yes, but no. And he quotes verses that say no, but yes. And here's why, okay? Krishna essentially, he sets up the system under which we all live and exist and work. We have no choice about whether or not we want to work under that system. That's his responsibility. That's his power. This is why he's called omnipotent, Vibhu in this verse, all-powerful. The verse is very interesting because Krishna is saying, the Supreme Lord is Vibhu, all-powerful, and yet he's not responsible for what you do. Which seems, again, like a contradiction. If you're all-powerful, why are you not responsible for what we do? You know, at the end of the Mahabharata war, Gandhari comes to Krishna, and she's just lost 100 of her sons. And she is devastated as a mother and as a queen of the kingdom. And she finally, in that moment of grief, comes to Krishna and she says, you know, Krishna, you are the only one who could have done something about this, and you didn't. Therefore, I hold you responsible. And she curses Krishna to lose his dynasty and his family as she lost hers, and that did come to pass. So Krishna is indeed all-powerful, right? And he has the ability to put a stop to anything. However, Krishna, his role in the whole thing is that he creates this system under which a system of laws and rules and natures and approaches that we have to live under. And then once we're in that system, it's up to us as to how we work through it and how we react to it and how we operate and make our own choices. Take, for example, a school. a school is set up with a particular system in place. Right? There are certain rules of behavior. There are certain things you can and cannot do. There are certain expectations of teachers, certain expectations of students, and the staff. Everyone has a particular role to play. But if you overstep those rules, then there's going to be consequences for that. You get called into the principal's office and you get told off, or you get suspended, or you get kicked out of school, or if you're a teacher, you get reprimanded or suspended from your job, and you might even lose your job if things aren't operated according to that system. Now, when someone doesn't work according to that system, a child, misbehaves or hurts another child, or a teacher misbehaves with a student, is it the school's fault? Is it the principal's fault for the consequences that that person will now get? The fact that they're being kicked out of school? Is it the school's responsibility? Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the school created a particular system that does not favor students who assault other students, right? Such students are not liked by the school system. They're discriminated against. That type of behavior is not appreciated. Whereas loving behavior is appreciated. That the school is responsible for. But when you actually go and hurt another student, you break the rules of the system, that's the individual student's responsibility. Take a prison house. The suffering that a prisoner goes through in the prison house, is that the government's responsibility? Yes and no. If it's a fair system in place, clearly there's going to be trouble in the prison house. But whether you're a model prisoner and you get your sentence reduced, or you're a problematic prisoner and you get solitary confinement, that type of decision is supposed to be up to you and your behavior. But the system is set up by the government. Now, we can complain that the system is not fair. It's set up in an unfair way. That we have a right to do. But once we're in the system, we cannot blame anyone but ourselves for our misbehavior and for breaking the rules under which we operate. In other words, people look at this world and they say that it's set up against me. It's not working in my favor. Things are not going the way I want. But it becomes our responsibility to realize that the way the world is set up, the laws of nature, the laws of human interaction, that's not up to us. That's up to the Lord. But it becomes our responsibility to understand what that system is and to work within it, to work it in our favor so that we can work our way out of it. Now at this point, we might say, well, this is a really harsh and depressing view of the world. It's a system that's set up with laws and rules and we're all kind of suffocating within it. But unlike a prison, unlike a school, there's one very big difference about Krishna's system in this world and the government system in a prison house. Well, okay, one difference is simply that Krishna's system is it's very well set up, right? Much better, like Ishopanishad says, Purnamadaha Purnamidam, Purnat Purnam Udachyate. Right? That this world is complete, it's perfect. This world here. Right? So it's a very well set up system where there's no loopholes, there's no corruption, there's and so on and so forth, right? You can't work the system in an unfair way. But that aside, there's one very big difference that softens this world in a way that other systems don't. Whether we're living under a government or in a prison house or in a school, other human-made systems don't. And the difference is that in this world, in this prison, in this environment that Krishna has created, he enters and becomes part of it. You see, in a prison house, the people who create the prison system are not the ones who have to live through it, who have to suffer through it. The people who create the school system are not the students. The people who create any system in this material world, look at a communist government or a capitalist government, they're not the people who end up being controlled by it. Forget controlled, they're not even affected by it in a direct way. But the beauty of Krishna's system, what makes it humane and what makes it something we can actually appreciate, is that Krishna himself enters it, becomes part of it, and is right there with us within it. And he describes this later on in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Upadrashtanumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapyukto dehismin purushapara. He says, I am the Paramatma, I am the super soul, or the Antaryami, within every living entity's heart. He's in the prison cell with us. Even though he's not a prisoner, he voluntarily chooses to accept the conditions of the prison. He's so confident about his system being good and beneficial and helpful for us. He says, look, you can't blame me because I've set up a perfect system. It's your responsibility to work through it in a way that's helpful. But I will be right there with you to help you through that. And so in every life that we take, Krishna comes as the Paramatma, as the Super Soul, as the Antaryami, right next to us. Whether we get that solitary confinement, there is no solitary confinement, right? It's the worst, actually, of all the various kinds of punishments that a person can get. It's horrific. It drives a person mad. But this world is not like that, because there's always at least two. There's me and there's him. Right? It's us and Krishna in the same cell together. And our companion is really, really amazing. He knows the way out. He has the keys to the exit. And that's what makes this world special. He says, Upadrashta. As the super soul in the heart, my role is Upadrashta. I am overseeing everything. Just to make sure that there's nothing unfair that goes on. You get what you should get, both good and bad. Upadrashta, Anumanta, and I'm permitting everything to happen. If you want to act in a particular way, to misbehave in a specific way, Krishna says, okay, I let you. Anumanta, I permit you to do that. But if you want to do good, I permit you as well. I don't want you to do this or that, but I let you do this or that. Because I let you have your independence, your free will, your choice as to how to work through the system. Upadrashta, Anumanta cha, Bharta. At the same time, I'm supporting you. I'm helping you. I'm putting your food on the table. I'm making sure even in that cell you get your daily meal. Upadrashta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta. And what's really amazing is this one, he says, Bhokta. He says, I am the enjoyer, the experiencer as well. In other words, what Krishna is saying is that it stands to reason, I'm right there next to you. I'm observing everything, I'm permitting it, I'm supporting you, I'm helping you out, and therefore I am also experiencing the consequences of your choices. There's this nice verse in Bhagavad Gita which describes austerities in different modes of nature. And austerity in the mode of ignorance, Krishna says, is that austerity which tortures the body and the super soul within. When we do too much austerity, This is why, as Vaishnavas, we don't push ourselves to the extremes that some other types of spiritual groups do. Because Krishna says, no, if you torture your body to an extent that is unnatural, not only are you giving pain to yourself, but you're also giving pain to me within the heart. Because I'm right there with you. Right? I'm not doing much. I'm not forcing you to act in a specific way. I'm trying to be hands-off, but I'm still going to be affected. It's like parents who, with grown-up children, with whom they want to kind of say, okay, look, you're old enough, you can make your own choices. I'll try not to interfere. And yet, if the children make terrible choices, it of course affects the parents also, right? You can't avoid it as a parent. You can't say, well, it's their life now, I don't care. You try to, maybe, but it doesn't really work that well. Their choices affect you in a deep way. And so this is why Krishna's last instruction in Bhagavad Gita is so wonderful, it's so beautiful. It's not just what he says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Give up all varieties of dharma and seek refuge in me. That message is beautiful, but it's the context of that message which is very, very beautiful. Where in chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, you know where this occurs, this final instruction? Where Krishna says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji manam. Think of me, become my devotee, offer your homage unto me. You know where he says this, chapter 18? He says it in the Gita after his instructions are over. Krishna has said, I have now taught you everything you need to do and what I wanted to tell you. And he tells Arjuna, Yathechasi tathakuru. Now, deliberate on this fully and do what you like, what you wish. Yathechasi tathakuru. As you desire, that you should do. And after he says, okay, you're grown up now, you're old enough to make your own decisions, I'm done with you. Make your own choice. He comes back and he says, but in case you wanted to know what I think you should do, let me repeat for you. And he takes an instruction from chapter 9 of Gita. Almost identical. Yes, almost identical, and he repeats it again in chapter 18. Just like a concerned parent who is trying to be hands-off and yet can't manage to do so because he just can't watch your kids make the wrong decision. Right? And so Krishna's going, but I just tell you once more what I think you should do, even though I just told you you can do whatever you want. He says, you should become my devotee. Think of me. I'll protect you. Don't worry. Stay at home, please. I'll take care of you. And that's what Krishna means when he says, Bhokta. I am the enjoyer. I'm the experiencer. Bhokta doesn't mean enjoyer only. It means experiencing anything. He says, I'm experiencing everything you're going through. I'm feeling it. Not directly because I'm a prisoner or because I'm a school child or I'm in the system. No, I'm controlling the system. He makes that clear. But because I'm right there next to you and I feel everything you're going through. I feel for it. And that's what makes the system so good, so positive, so wonderful. That's what makes this world so wonderful. It's not because it's 100% a beautiful place. You know, it would be nice if that were true. That this is just a beautiful, beautiful world. I just recently, I visited my brother. He works in Fort Myers, Florida. And we went to the Everglades. And it was, you know, such a beautiful, beautiful place and just completely natural and birds and dolphins and all kinds of... And just sitting there admiring everything, how beautiful this world is. And all of a sudden this wonderful bird comes down onto the, you know, the seabirds, and they dive into the water and they find a fish. It comes flying down, it's just idyllic scene, flies into the water and keeps going into the water. And out jumps this huge alligator, catches it, and it's dead. Right? Just the very object of beauty I was admiring. And all of a sudden it's like, it's, oh yeah, okay, this world is a beautiful place, and yet it's also not so beautiful, right? There's also so much problem and so much difficulty. So what makes this world beautiful is not that everything is perfect from our perspective. No, it's not, right? And Krishna makes that clear too. What makes this world beautiful is that despite its having all the ups and downs and problems that it might be, despite the fact that things don't go our way, despite all of that, Krishna's right there next to us. And he's ready to say, I'm here to help. The two birds sitting on the same tree, Va Soparna Sayuja Sakaya. One eating the fruits of the tree, that's us, and the other observing, watching, being there as a friend. And when we're ready to turn towards Krishna, then Krishna, he says, oh, I've got the keys to the prison cell. I'll help you. I'll let you out. I can do that. But only when you want to go. I'm not going to push you out. I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to make the decision for you. No. You can have your own desires. So, we can't blame Krishna for where we're at. Clearly, it's not beneficial for us or for others to go around pointing the finger at others and saying it's your fault or your fault. So the last option we might say is, well, maybe it's all my fault. But that's not so nice either. Right? If I think everything is my fault, then that's kind of a recipe for depression. Is really feeling like, oh gosh, I'm just a horrible person. I'm just terrible. Everything is my fault. Even if half of what we go through is my fault, it's still a cause for depression. Right? So Krishna, in the previous verse that we read, he says, no, that's not a good idea either. He says, the embodied spirit, that's us, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action, the results of action. He says so kindly, Krishna, he says, look, I'm not responsible, but you aren't either. You aren't either responsible. Rather, he says, all this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Which means what? It's just the system. It's the system. If you act like this, you will get sinful reaction. If you act like this, you will get pious reaction. If you act like this, you can get the keys to leave. This is the system. And while in that system, you've got very little choice. You have very little control of the environment. It's again like a prison house. You don't have a whole lot of choice where you can move. But you have one thing, which is your no amrita. They're depressed, they're exhausted, they're tired. This isn't going to work. Krishna says, you know what he tells them? He says, it's okay, you all relax, you all rest. He takes both ends, both sides, and churns himself, and then amrita comes out, the nectar. He brings out the amrit himself. What happens instantly? The demons snatch it and hide it. Again, the demigods go crying to the Lord. Oh, we lost it, what should we do? I mean, talk about needy children. This is again and again and again. And Krishna says, it's okay, I'll help. He comes as Mohini, beautiful form. He bewilders the demons, feeds all the nectar to the devas, and the demons get nothing. Again and again and again and again in the story, Krishna is helping them. Why? What have they done to deserve it? I mean, Bali Maharaj, frankly, was a good king. Even his father, Virochana, wasn't bad. His grandfather, Prahlad, was terrific. Why does he keep helping the devas? You know why? Just because they ask for it. just because they ask for it. Right? That's all. It's as simple as that. Really, if you study Bhagavatam and you look for specific identifiable qualities that distinguish the demigods from the demons, there's some that they have proportionately more, but there's no one quality you can find consistently across all of them. Demons have more lust, the demigods less, well, I don't know. Demons have more anger, demigods less, don't know. Right? You can't do it. But there's one quality that the demigods show consistently. They're willing to ask the Lord for help. Right? Seek and you shall find. Just that simple act of going to Krishna and saying, I know you're right here next to me, can you please help? Even if that desire is not pure, Krishna sees that, he fans the flames, and he helps us develop better desires so that we can ultimately get out. And that is the secret of bhakti. Right? That's the secret of devotional service. It doesn't require 100% right at the start. It just requires us to ask, to go to the Lord and say, Tavasmi, I'm yours. Please tell me what I need to do. I still have some material desires, I'm sorry. And what I'm actually asking you for is not all that good. I know. But who should I come to? I know you run this system. I know you created it all. You're in control. Please help me. And Krishna says, okay, I'll help you, and I'll also help you have better desires. I'll help you work your way out of this world and help you find me fully, 100%. And then this world becomes truly a beautiful place. That's when the devotee comes to resolve and says, actually, I don't need to blame myself. I don't need to blame others. I don't need to blame God, because there is no one and nothing to blame. Maybe I can stop blaming altogether. Maybe there's no reason for blame, because maybe the system is perfect. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Everything's perfect. Everything is complete. So there's no reason to blame. Only reason for gratitude. No blame, but only gratitude. Gratitude for Krishna, gratitude for other devotees, gratitude even for whatever service we can do for Krishna. And that... And when we do that, give up our blame, blaming anyone, not blaming others, not blaming ourselves, not blaming God, but saying there's no reason to blame, but only reason to thank. That, I think, is the cure to our election problem right now. Thank you all so much.
Question is, sometimes we see people come to Krishna consciousness and they are so fired up and enthusiastic and they leave and they never come back again. So when Krishna fulfills even a small desire and he fans it, then why this thing happens?
Yes. It's because, Can you repeat the question? So the question is that sometimes Krishna fans even a small desire, I was saying. But often we see that people come to Krishna consciousness, they maintain a lot of enthusiasm, and then they leave. And then why is that flame not being fanned? But I think what we have to really question is this statement as to whether they leave or not, right? I mean, from our perspective, they may be leaving. They may be leaving our association. We may not see them. But are they really leaving? And the reality is that once someone connects to Krishna, they don't leave Krishna. In fact, Krishna doesn't leave them. And it may indeed be the case that someone has other desires that need to be worked out. There may even be an agreement between them and Krishna. Krishna, give me a little bit more time. I need to work out a few more things in this world. And Krishna says, okay, fine, you can do it. I'm watching over. And when the time is right, he'll rope them back in. They will be drawn back to him. right? So the question of leaving is actually a very, very suspicious thing, suspicious idea when it comes to bhakti. Because how can we leave Krishna? He's right there, right? Upadrashta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta. He's right there. We can't leave him. But yes, we may take a hiatus in the relationship, a little pause, and want a little detour on the highway. And Krishna says, okay, fine. We'll work through that too, together. And when you're ready, we'll get back on the main road. And we'll go full speed ahead. But for now, you can take the exit, amble along, look at whatever there is to see, and when you're ready, we'll come back. So we don't know the journey of that person, right? We don't know that journey entirely. Some people may, quote unquote, leave from our association, but then some people may stay and like, we're on the highway, but in the shoulder, barely moving, right? That is also possible, even though we're here, we didn't leave, but we're just crawling along on the highway, right? While everyone else is zipping past. We see that happening also. So everyone is in a different place, but the reality is that Krishna is right there next to them, and they're working it out with Krishna. Right? Krishna knows what those desires are, and he's ready to fulfill them, and yet still bring them back when they're ready. Is it time?
We can take one more.
Okay, last one. Yeah.
So wonderful class, thank you so much. So the question I have is, like you mentioned that we need to ask Krishna, one of the feature of the demigods, or the demigod was able to successful is because they consistently asked him.
Yes.
At the same time, the Lord is also near to us. So even why do we even need to ask him? He knows exactly what we need. He knows what our desires are. So even if we don't ask him, will he not jump in and help us?
Yes. So the question is, Krishna is right there next to us. So even if we don't ask him, will he not jump in and help us? And the answer is definitely yes, he will. He knows, like Prabhupada, he gives such a nice example in the purport. It's so beautiful. He says, just like one can know the flavor or the aroma of a flower just by being next to it, Krishna knows where we're at just because he's next to us, right? So he knows, and we don't have to ask. If you look at the character of Prahlad Maharaj, he never once asks the Lord for protection. This is very different than devotees like Dhruva and Uttara and Arjuna, who did ask Krishna for protection at different points in their life. Some of it has to do with our personal relationship with Krishna, our style. Just like we have different children, right? I have 2 children. One asks more, the other asks less. Both are taken care of by the parents, right? But one has a habit of asking. And that's pleasant for the parents. It's kind of sweet when the kids come and ask up to a certain point. Not in the supermarket, going all around. But others don't, right? And that's also nice. You try to think of what they want and try to take care of their needs. So some of it is a difference in relationship, right? As whether we feel like we want to ask Krishna or not about it. Devotees, it's not that when we become advanced devotees, we stop asking Krishna. We always ask Krishna because we're in a dependent relationship. That's the nature of dependence, right? That he's our goptartve varanam tata. He's our maintainer. That's what it means to make God our maintainer. It's just the nature of the asking changes. Initially, we're like the kid in the supermarket. Can I have that? Can I have that? Can I have that? It's annoying. And Krishna says, okay, you can have that, but no, not that. That's okay for you, but that's not. You've already had some of that, no more. So Krishna's acting like that to us, right? But as we become advanced, then our desires change, right? Our asking changes. Krishna, please give me an opportunity to serve you. Seva adhikaro diye koro nijadasa. We sing this, right? But when we really mean it, we're asking for Krishna. Please give us the opportunity for service. And maybe it's this service that we want to help with. Right? Prabhupada's praying to Krishna, let this land in Mumbai become ours. Right? Let your temple rise here. He's asking Krishna, but it's not our asking. Right? It's not the same as ours. So it's not that asking disappears. Some people may ask more, some may ask less, depending on their personal relationship with Krishna. Some may choose to be more just dependent. Whatever Krishna you want, I'm whatever you want to do, right, with me. More of a mood of Rukmini. Some may be more like Satyabhama, more demanding. Right? Krishna has different devotees with different kinds of relationships. He enjoys every single type. He enjoys the needy child. He enjoys the really content child. He enjoys all the varieties of relationships. But he's hoping that we're going to advance in the process, right? That we will move from asking for that which is petty and that which is not helpful to that which is actually good and that will please him, right? And that's us growing up. That's us as adult children saying, this is what my parents would really like of me. This is the type of asking that they would appreciate, and this is the type of asking maybe not.